Jim Hawkins. Call 0808 100 96 96.
BBC Radio Shropshire.
Every day just after 12:30, we introduce you to one of the many amazing, interesting, fascinating people who are in Shropshire, from Shropshire, or connected to Shropshire. We call it the cool seat. It's like the antithesis of the hot seat. No one gets a grilling. We just get to find out about them. In the cool seat today, James Barrow. James is founder and leader of TAIKOWEST, which is Shropshire-based online Japanese taiko drumming courses. James, thanks so much for being in the cool seat this afternoon.
Hi there, Jim. Good to be here.
How did you get into taiko drumming?
I was an English language teacher in Hiroshima for 4.5 years. And while I was there as a hobby, I joined a local Japanese taiko drumming group and I got bitten by the bug. I studied at my teacher's house for about 2-3 times a week for the best part of 4 years. Took some exams in my 3rd year and got some certificates from my teacher that gave me permission to teach and perform the traditional drumming rhythms and also bamboo flute melodies from that particular part of Japan. And when I came back to the UK, I set up the first traditional taiko drumming group in the UK at the private Japanese college where I was still teaching the language. And after that, I retrained at Goldsmiths College, University of London, gave up the teaching English day job and switched everything to teaching, performing and recording Japanese taiko drumming across the UK, occasionally overseas. And I've been doing that as a full-time job since 1998 now.
How would you describe taiko drumming to people who've not seen or heard it?
Yeah, those people who've never seen it. It's almost like a mixture of martial arts and drumming at the same time. It's like a whole body experience. And whereas playing on a kit drum, most people would sit on a stool. With taiko drumming, it's very much a whole body thing. You get into a sort of squatting martial arts type posture. And the sticks that we use, they're called bachi sticks. They're pretty big. I mean, they can go up the size of like rolling pins. And so it's a whole body. It could be described almost like as a cross between sport and drumming or martial arts and drumming.
The sticks can be big. The drums can be big too.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm speaking to you from Church Stretton at the moment. I'm looking out the window here. You can see the Long Mynd up there. But actually, the window of the room that I'm looking out of, I turned it into a little music studio. And I've got the largest drum that I've got sort of behind me now. It's called a hiradaiko in Japanese, a flat drum. I guess it's about 50 centimeters wide, and it's sort of hanging on a cross stand. And one of the postures you can use when you're playing it is you're literally standing, full upright, playing with your back to the audience and doing a sort of face-on battering of the drum. That's the biggest one I've got in the room. We've got a few others as well and a few bamboo flutes here. The rest are all in the van outside.
I'm going to ask you if we can hear a couple of these in just a little while, but I really want to know, what was it like working and living in Japan for 4 years?
I was one of the lucky people from the West that I knew in the city who, for some reason, didn't experience a kind of culture shock. It was kind of the opposite, the wrong way around for me. A lot of people have a tough period and adjusting to the cultural differences. In my case, I still don't know why, I felt at home like as soon as I stepped off the plane. And so I had like a 4-year honeymoon period, as it were, and I just slotted in for whatever reason. On the surface, it's very similar to the West, in a very modern environment, but the cultural, historical differences are there. The longer you stay there, the more your language understanding, and make more Japanese friends, and you learn little insights about how the society is quite different.
What do you think it was about it that made you kind of feel at home from the moment you got off the plane?
It's a really good question. I still, even now, I still can't put my finger on it. I still think of Hiroshima as like my second or third home. So I've been back about 4 or 5 times. Yeah. Since I moved back to the UK, it's really hard to put the finger on it. I'm not sure what it was that made me feel so comfortable there, but I still have that feeling whenever I visit again. So I don't know. It still eludes me, to be honest with you.
The cultural differences. I mean, there are there's loads of them. Many of them are quite small things. Is it possible to like sum up what the overall difference is, or is it just so varied that you have to take them on an individual basis?
Yeah, you can dig so deeply into the cultural differences. I mean, one thing that took me a while to understand was the the well-known politeness and hospitality of Japanese culture. To myself as a visitor, I was treated so well. I mean, the hospitality was just incredible, and people were always sort of buying me presents. I mean, there is this habit of people buying souvenirs and presents for people when you visit people's houses, and if ever you go on a trip, you have to buy X number of presents to bring back for all the family members, and there's a sense of obligation in that. But it's also quite a sort of heartwarming thing as well. But and on one level, that's a kind of surface thing. Underneath, of course, there are, I guess, like any society, there are different kinds of problems there that somebody like myself, as initially not being a Japanese speaker, you wouldn't necessarily have been aware of those deeper social issues that were going on. But maybe that's part of the reason why it took me a while to. I had, to some extent, I had a sort of rose-colored glasses on a little while from a cultural experience living over there. And then as I made more Japanese friends and my language abilities got a little bit better, it was like, oh yeah, it's not the perfect environment. It's got its own problems just like any other country. So it took me a while to realise that, I guess.
James Barrow from TAIKOWEST is in the cool seat of BBC Radio Shropshire today. We talked about the drums that you play and the sticks that you used to play, little bamboo flutes and everything. What about the music that you play, the rhythms, the patterns, that kind of thing? Is that do they date back hundreds of years, or is this something more recent, or what?
It's a great question. In my particular teacher in Hiroshima, his approach is very, very traditional. And the group that I was a member of is called Hozonkai in Japanese, which basically means preservation society. So my teacher was only interested not in composing and experimenting with new directions for taiko drumming, but preserving the original rhythms and flute melodies that he heard while he was growing up. And historically, to my understanding, taiko drumming probably most likely started in the fields and farms and villages as a folk art to celebrate things like for a successful harvest, or whenever there was a wedding or a gathering of some kind. But over the years, the drums became adopted into sort of the bigger social institutions like Buddhism and Shintoism, the main religion, started using taiko in their rituals, and then things like traditional forms of drama, kabuki theatre, no theatre, they use small taiko drums as well. And the military, there's history that the military used them for giving signals on the battlefield and things like that. And eventually, the royal family as well, would have orchestras that included quite a lot of ornately decorated taiko drums. That's the history of it, and my teacher was sort of leaning towards that side. However, after the Second World War, with lots of influences internationally and from America, for example, jazz drumming and traditional taiko drumming started getting mixed up. And after a particularly sort of showcase event, I think it was the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo, where a new configuration of taiko drumming, where it was like just people drumming for entertainment, a team of drummers with lots of energy just drumming. That was all, the 50s and 60s was when that really developed. And in the 80s, a pioneer group called Kodo, that live on a small island off the north coast of Japan, started touring internationally. And that's what a lot of people have seen. If they've seen taiko drumming, for example, at local theatres, it would have been touring groups like that, using that particular sort of post-war, modern, professional stage style of taiko drumming. So I like to keep a foot in both camps, really. I'm lucky that I was able to get a handle on the traditional side of the drumming through my teacher in Hiroshima, but I'm also lucky to have played with some really amazing taiko musicians and who are experimenting and pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Who comes to you to learn taiko drumming? Is it but maybe people who've done it before and want to improve? Is it people who just are fascinated by the whole thing and want to start from scratch?
It's a whole mixture. Before the lockdown, I was teaching. I spent about 4 or 5 years building up something called the TAIKOWEST Schools and Communities Project, and I was teaching at various schools in Shropshire, further afield, West Midlands, right the way across to Derbyshire, actually. And I was teaching at like 8 different venues, and we had like 22 different groups all learning within a week or a month. And when in those cases, I would go to, for example, the local St. Lawrence Primary School in Church Stretton. They were kind enough to host me. I was lucky to be able to go there once a week, and I would be teaching the younger children, year 5 and 6 from the primary school, straight after school. And then some of the secondary school students would come along for another class after that. And then parents and adults would come for an evening class. And I would do that 4 times a week in the region. And the adults that would come to the evening class, they would be a mixture, as you just said. people who are just curious, people who were maybe kit drummers or had tried African drumming or samba drumming and they wanted to learn a new style. Some people with an interest in martial arts and sort of Japanese culture. So there'd be all kinds of ability levels in terms of musicality and interest levels, and we try and come together and we would learn a piece in over a course of like 8 or 10 lessons, and then we try and arrange a sort of showcase small performance at the end of the course, and we would invite friends and families, get a little audience there, and that was a great system that was going for like 4, 5, nearly 6 years. And since the lockdown, of course, a lot of those keen adult students have wanted to carry on in some form or other.
Yeah.
So that's why we switched to the online classes now.
What's it like taking it into schools? What kind of reaction do you get when you make this fantastic noise in the school?
Oh, honestly, it's great. Before I started setting up, particularly doing after-school classes, which is what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, prior to that, for the best part of 10 years, I was mostly working in schools where I would sort of be called in for a day. They'd have like a culture day or an international day or a Japan day or something like that. And I'd be brought in and we'd typically take over the whole of the main school hall, the assembly hall. And we'd get classes coming in, in rotation. And I'd have like 30 students in the big hall and we'd all be drumming all at the same time. And yeah, we would generate so much energy, such great fun.
I can imagine. You mentioned you've been teaching online. How has that worked out?
Well, we switched to Zoom. It's been a steep learning curve for me, but thanks to the support of so many people who were previously coming to my in-person real-life classes, who, like me, I was bitten by the bug in Japan. A lot of the students that are sticking with the taiko at the moment, they've obviously been bitten by the taiko bug in the UK, and they were keen enough, despite the fact that obviously you lose some key elements of the experience when you're not drumming in a room with a team of people, that you lose an element of that, but there's enough people who are still interested and keen enough to keep it going online, and we've got quite a few new faces turning up as well, because we're advertising via social media and things like that, and we're getting quite a few people turning up. I think we're doing it as a Zoom class, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evenings, and there's slightly different ability and experience levels, and it's like a 75-minute class. And everybody's becoming familiar with Zoom, and we're using that as our format. And we're still following this idea of learning pieces of repertoire. We don't have the performance at the end of the course now, but we're doing 5-week chunks. And it's been very much a learning curve. It's useful for me to learn a whole new set of skills of dealing with the online and the technical side of things. And I've been helped tremendously by one of my students, Michael de Groot. He's based in Worcestershire, and he's got a lot of experience in this, and he's helped me through the whole process of setting the whole thing up. If it wasn't for him, it wouldn't have happened. So it's working really well.
I talked a bit about the drums earlier on. Where do you have to like import them from Japan, or are there local taiko drum makers?
We don't have any local taiko drum makers. There are some people. There's a guy by the name of Jared Hardwick, who's up in Yorkshire. He's a fellow taiko drummer, and he runs taiko classes as well. He's turned his hand in recent years to repairs and drum making. He's getting really good at it. There's a person up in the north of Scotland, actually, who makes his own taiko drums. If you want the sort of deepest quality ones, for want of a better phrase, there are numerous factories in Japan, and I'm lucky to have the drum hanging behind me that was bought from them, courtesy of the Japanese embassy in London. This is nearly 20 years ago now. There was a large fund available, and I applied to it, and they said, we'll buy you this drum. It's a company called Asano Taiko, and they're a 400-year-old family business in a place called Ishikawa Prefecture, again on the north coast, and I'm lucky to have one of their top quality drums behind me. But I've also got a Chinese-made drum. So there are quite a lot of Chinese manufacturers that are making Chinese drums, but also my understanding is some of them are collaborating with Japanese manufacturers to copy the proportions and the dimensions and the materials as close as possible, albeit using Japanese manpower and Chinese manpower and Chinese materials, trying to do as close a replica as they can of a Japanese drum. There's a company in Germany that's doing a fantastic job of importing them from China and then distributing them around Europe, and I've got quite a few of their drums now as well. And although they don't have quite the same sound quality, they're really good value for money because it's a close approximation and the price is lower than getting it from Japan themselves. But if you want the real deal, you have to go to somewhere like the Asano Taiko factory, and unfortunately probably have to take out a bank loan to buy one.
You mentioned, James, that you have that you're in your music studio at home in Church Stretton. I don't know what this looks like, and if I were actually on site, then I'd be able to kind of make informed decisions about what we could do to try and hear the sound of the drums. So all I can do is say, could you then turn around and tell us about this the 50 centimeter drum that you have hanging on a stand, and kind of explain a bit about how you would use it and demonstrate it for us?
Okay. It'll involve me moving away from this particular microphone, but I've got another one set up the other side of the room. So apologies if the volume of my
No, that's
voice
fine. That's okay.
Yeah. So we've got two smaller drums here, which have got some nice tones on them. This is the Japanese one. This is made from Japanese cherry wood. And this next one is a medium-sized drum. This is one of the Chinese-made ones. But the bigger one is hanging at the back of the room, so I'm going to have a go. I'm going to switch to my much bigger sticks now. These are the sort of rolling pin size ones.
Okay, because the medium-sized one sounded pretty big, I got to say.
Oh, right. Well, hopefully this won't be too loud. This is a
No,
bit
it's
of a
fine.
distance from the microphone, so here we go.
Okay.
So I'm standing now in a wide posture. Got my feet nice and wide apart, like I'm doing some kind of, karate pose or something. I've got the hand wrapped around in a fist shape over these big rolling pin size sticks, and I'm facing the drum that is hanging on a cross stand, and I'm just you bring the whole of the fist behind your head, big shoulder movements, and here comes the sound.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, we definitely got the idea. We definitely got the idea. Also, we stretched the dynamics processing on FaceTime to the absolute limit on that one. No, that sounded absolutely tremendous. You must really miss actually getting out there with a group of people and doing that in a big space or in the open air.
I do miss that. I really do miss that. And it's not that there aren't venues who are now obviously have reopened. I know we've got these pending lockdowns and things and restrictions coming back in again, but local venues have done a fantastic job, I think, of managing all the new risks with the whole lockdown and everything. My only concern is, I guess I got a preference. Everybody's doing their own research and getting information about the risks of getting together in groups at the moment.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm more aware of this whole idea of maximizing ventilation. When I set up in a space, I tend to be there nearly for the whole day, and so I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great to find if there's any venues out there that are, I know the weather's turning, but if I was to find one that was semi-outdoor, where you've got your guaranteed rain cover, but you've got loads of ventilation coming in, like something like a giant sombrero marquee or something like that, where you can sort of open the sides up and maximize the ventilation and reduce the risk in that sense. And I'm kind of on the lookout for that kind of venue. And rather than going back to what I used to use, which was like a regular size school hall, for example, I'm kind of on the lookout for one where we could still get large numbers of people back together doing a physical activity. We do lots of shouting and things. It's a bit like martial arts. I don't know if you've seen people practicing karate. They rarely do it silently. They're using their voice, the kiai as they call it. And that's part of the taiko drumming as well, lots of shouting. And I'm thinking, we probably don't tick the right boxes in terms of being a particularly COVID secure activity, in the sense that everybody's jumping around and shouting, so there's lots of respirating going on and all the rest of it. Of course, you'd be wearing masks and you'd be wiping down the equipment and everything and keeping the drums nice and far apart. All of those things are doable, but I'm still thinking, I still think we generate a fair amount of those aerosols that they talk about.
Yes.
So I'm kind of on the lookout for one of those. If there is some kind of magical venue somewhere, I'm sure there must be, so I'm keeping my ear close to the ground. Some people have recommended, for example, equestrian riding centres, which tend to have open ends for, animals coming in and out, and, nice high roofs. It's sort of half indoor, half outdoor. I'm thinking, So I came close to following that up properly. But that was just before the last government announcements came in, and I'm thinking maybe I should revisit that as a possibility. So, but I do miss it. The online classes are going well, but everybody who's enjoying the online classes, they always say, and I'm looking forward to when we go back to do this in real life. So eventually, hopefully, we'll have a good balance of the two.
I want to be there when you do, because it sounds absolutely incredible. James Barrow from TAIKOWEST, thank you so much for being in the cool seat with us here at BBC Radio Shropshire today.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye bye.
Cheers.
You can find out more about what James does at taikowest.com. That's all one word: TAIKOWEST.com. I've seen taiko drummers in action a number of times, and it is the most awesome thing. And you just want to do it yourself so badly. TAIKOWEST.com. Go and have a look. TAIKOWEST.com. And huge thanks to James Barrow for being in the cool seat today.
Hi everybody, James at TAIKOWEST here. If you are interested in signing up for one of our online taiko drumming classes, but you're not quite sure how it works out, well, please sign up first for one of our free taster sessions. These are usually held of an evening, usually about 60 minutes long. We often run over, we're generous with our time, but it's a chance for you to find out what a typical weekly class is like. This will be a shorter version of a typical weekly class, chance for you to ask us any questions and to iron out any technical issues you might have. The times and dates of the next free taster sessions, they're either on this webpage or on this post. So if you do want to sign up for one of the free tasters, please go to taikowest.com. First page you land on, scroll down, you've got a few options. You can either sign up for a one-to-one class with me, you can sign up for a proper course straight away, or you can try one of these taster sessions. If you've still got questions ahead of signing up for a taster, you can also sign up for a taiko chat with me. And then we can really answer all your questions and point you back in the direction of the tasters you love them. So, hope to see you on a taster or a class or a chat or something pretty soon. Ha!